Do you know what? There's quite a few people messaging me now, asking me about specs on the car, what we've done, that ECU, how much power we've got, what we're running. Should we just do a video and just like tell them everything we're running on the car, all the mods, just everything about the car?
Yeah, why not?
Be quite fun, wouldn't it?
Welcome back to Team JTR. So yeah, as you've seen, we're going to do a video. We're going to reveal all of our modifications that we put on this Elise Cup for this season. I get lots of messages about braking system, what suspension do you run? I get a ton of questions about that ECU that I'm running that's got me all that power. So I'm going to go through all of that in this video. We're going to cover 5 main points. We're going to cover power modifications, we're going to cover cooling modifications, weight loss modifications, braking and suspension. And I'm going to try and do it all in this video in one take, and then you guys have absolutely everything that you need. And yeah, let's go from there. So first thing I'm going to talk about is the ECU. It's a hot trend right now for the Lotus Elise Cup cars. This car was the first to have it on and test it really. And essentially what it did is we were able to go from 220 horsepower to 260 horsepower very, very easily, with only one other modification, which was the exhaust system. So there's a few myths out there about it. There's some information that's wrong out there, but quite simply, it's an ECU system by ECU Master that's installed by RRR Engineering here in the UK. It comes with a plug and play wiring harness to go straight into your existing loom. It comes with a new sensor for the exhaust, and I will also recommend that you get a data logger with it if you're interested in purchasing it, so that you can, if you have any problems with your car in the future or whatever else, all of the data is recorded and you can send that file to RRR and they can basically see what issue you've got, or if you even have any issues. So that's the package that you get from them. In conjunction with an exhaust, if you've got a Cup 220, that'll take your car to about 260 brake horsepower. If you've got a Cup 250, that'll take it to about 290 brake horsepower, all with a full system exhaust, and on my car is a tubular system exhaust. So let me show you where the ECU is and where that sits and what that looks like. Chris, would you mind? This is my beautiful assistant Chris, he's my chief mechanic. He's just going to take the engine cover off for us. So I'll show you, ECU just sits there. Goes on the original bolt hole, only needs one. It's a very small, lightweight piece of kit, and this one is using the plug-in-play wiring harness, which you can just see neatly installed there. So that's essentially what it comes with, and that, with the exhaust system we've got, takes it to 260 brake horsepower, which we've been running all season and had zero issues with whatsoever. So that was the trick to get us into Class A actually. It's a really, really good system. So if you want to check that out, get in touch with RRR Engineering. It's on their website. I'm not sure on the cost, you'll have to check that out. But yeah, it's been brilliant, tested with me all season, and there's a lot of people running that ECU now. So good upgrade. Any questions, give them a shout about it. The other thing we're running in the power category is we've got manifolds from Tubular. We've got a decap pipe down there, you can't see, it's pretty tight down here. Decap pipe from Tubular, and I actually got Jim to sort me a rear silencer, but I didn't bother with their fancy tailpipe. We just came straight out and just tried to save weight with the exhaust system, really. The only other modification we did part way through this season was we put a TRD airbox on, which is basically a bigger back plate, and we put a K&M filter on as well. So those are the only 3 power upgrades we did this season. So we've got the ECU, exhaust and TRD airbox. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is the cooling. So come with me. One thing that, when we switched to the ECU, one thing we found was we were able to read the data of the car a lot better. So you can plug in sensors and run all sorts. You can check up all sorts of data on the car. One of the things we noticed was our intake temps was very, very high. We were actually, during the endurance races, we were running about 65 degrees intake temperatures, which is super high, zapping all of the power of the engine, and it wasn't good. So we needed to come up with a solution to get the supercharger coolant a lot cooler and bring those intake temps down, really. So, Chris, would you mind popping this front clam off? What we did, we developed, in conjunction with RR Engineering, a secondary charge cooler to sit on the front of the car. And RR Engineering also kindly made us a carbon surround for that, which we managed to just get installed for the last round of the Club Endurance Championship this season. And that was the final key to bringing those temps right down. In essence, we went from 65 degrees on average during an endurance race to around about 45 to 48 degrees by the last round of the season with the carbon surround. So it's a massive, massive difference. It wasn't a very expensive development for us, and it's definitely helped with the power duration through a race. So Chris has kindly took that off for us. So here we go. So here is the charge cooler, and this is the carbon surround. So we've put it in this section because obviously this is a very high flow wind area. The charge cooler itself is very small, very slim. What we're doing is we're pinching a bit of air intake from the cooling rad here, which you can just see up there. However, we're also directing with this carbon surround the airflow into that radiator a lot better. So it did not actually increase our engine coolant temps whatsoever. It did not go up a degree. So by putting this charge cooler there, it didn't take any airflow from the radiator and only gave us positives. Essentially, this is quite an easy install for anyone who's handy with the tools. What we did was, this is your current charge cooler on the car, and this is your only charge cooler on the car. And it's basically, it has to get the air through this very small slot, and you're getting inefficient cooling because it really only cools the bottom part of the rad. I mean, you can see here, the rad's dirty at the bottom, but it's barely touched up the top. So what we did, by piggybacking this one from this charge cooling system, we essentially changed the pipe. This is the one that's in fall is the return pipe. The one that's black is the pipe back from the engine. So it goes into this charge cooler first. So it's, the coolant's getting cooled in there, comes out of there, goes into this charge cooler here, gets cooled for a second time, and then returns back to the engine. Now, basically that does two things. It's got two opportunities of cooling. The second time it gets cooled is a better airflow at the front, and also we're actually running slightly more fluid in the system. So for us it was just a win-win really. I've heard that RRR are actually going to be making these kits and offering them to the market. I think it's a very good upgrade. I don't think it's going to cost a lot. And essentially, if you're doing a lot of track days and you're doing 30-minute sessions out there, you must be able to feel the power zap on the engine, because I did. And yeah, I think it's a really good upgrade. Definitely for racing, it's a really good upgrade. And yeah, that was one of the cooling modifications we've done. I don't think there's anything else on the front there to talk about. The only other modification we did here for cooling was we cut out this clamp on the rear. So we've got spare clams and parts all up on top of the office there. Essentially what we did is we cut the boot out of the clamp to create some more airflow from the hot air from outside the engine. We put some scoops on here to capture more of the air in, flows through, and then we get rid of that hot, nasty air through this vent at the rear. So that was an easy modification. That was just cutting and adding some mesh. And the only other cooling modifications we did was brake ducts on the rear and brake ducts on the front. So what we did on the front was we essentially just brought this brake duct. You can get it from eBay, you can get it from anywhere. and we went through the crash box there with a trumpet there and a little trumpet there, and then we fire the cool air straight to the inner part of the disc. So that was a good cooling modification that we made to the car as well. Next thing we're going to talk about is weight loss. What weight loss have we done on this car? So some of the big weight losses were basically making new parts. So first thing we did was we got this diffuser custom made for us. This was made by a friend of ours who actually owns a road car. His friend is very good with Ali, and what we did is we got the original Cup R diffuser, which is very heavy, I think 10 kilograms in fact. It's made out of fiberglass, the original one. And what we did is we basically got him to profile this and make an Ali version for us. This was a really, really good weight saving. A weight saving that we removed from the best part of the car as well, which is the rear, because the car's very rear end heavy. So we got this made. It sticks out slightly further, it's about 1 inch further, and you'll notice we've actually got extra fins just to clean the air as it's coming through from underneath the car. And this saved us 5 kilograms in total, so that was a really good modification. You can't buy that out on the market, but if you do want something like that, you can drop me an inbox and I'll put you in touch with the guy who made it. He's very good, and some people have had them done and powder coated black and look really good, to be fair. So that was another mod we had done. Other ways we lost weight on the car is we changed the engine cover. The standard engine cover on the car is really heavy, so what we did, we purchased an old Rover S2 K Series one. We cut some extra holes out on the cooling, and basically it's just a single skin engine cover, and it's a lot lighter, so that saved us a lot of weight. Another area was the roof. Standard roof on the car, which is still up there, was very, very heavy. So what we did was we spoke with a guy called Phil Peake, who many of you will know, and he made us a single skin roof, which weighs something like less than 2 kilograms. And you're removing the weight from high up as well, which is a very good thing. Other things we did for weight loss were, we've got a carbon tilt seat, saved us some weight. We've got a Odyssey PC 680 battery down there in the footwell, so not only have we moved this battery into a better position, I think this battery weighs about 5 kilograms and the standard one in your boot is about 13 kilograms, so it's a huge weight saving in a battery alone, and it's got great cranking amps, and yeah, never had any problem starting the car with it, so it's really good, very popular in the race scene. What else did we do? I suppose you can call this as a bit of a weight loss. The rear spoiler on the car. So this rear spoiler we got custom made. I basically spent about 2 hours watching aerodynamic videos on YouTube, looking at a lot of wind tunnel data on cars, just specifically for the spoiler, and I come up with a size, the dimensions, the cord length, even down to the end plates. I come up with a configuration that I thought would work with the car. Obviously we don't have wind tunnels, so I'm not going to spend $5,000 on a wind tunnel for the day to test it out, but we come up with something that we thought would work, and on the data that I had from last year's cornering speeds to this year's cornering speeds, it was a lot higher this year, so we think it works. The rear end of the car was much more planted and stable in the high speed corners especially, you could really tell that at Spa, so whilst it gave us more downforce than the standard Cup wing, it also saved us some weight. I don't know what the exact weight was, but this carbon wing is much lighter. So that was another area for weight loss. And the other thing, which unfortunately I'm not going to be able to, I don't think I'm going to be able to show you. We might do. Under here, the shear panel, you'll probably notice that we are running a bag tank, an ATL FIA approved bag tank, which does two things. It was needed for the endurance racing that we're doing this season, because it carries about 67 litres of fuel, but also it saved a shed load of weight over the standard steel fuel tank. So that was a big weight loss for us. So moving on to the braking, I get a lot of questions about what brakes I'm running, what discs I'm running, what pads we're running, what calipers we're running. So I'll start with calipers first. We are running the standard factory Lotus calipers, and that's 2-pot calipers on the front, AP calipers, and basically a single piston handbrake caliper on the rear. I know lots of you are saying, why haven't you got 4 pots on the front and you put your 2 pots on the rear, which everyone does. But for the weight of the car, which is about 880 kilograms before me, stick me in there and it goes off the scale. But we haven't needed it, even with this power. I think the brakes on the Lotus are very, very good. I don't think you need 4 pots on a car this light. I mean, I couldn't imagine having any more brake bias to the front of the car. I think it's the last thing you want to do on this size wheelbase and the Lotus platform, really. Especially the Elise platform. Can't imagine putting any more brake bias to the front of the car. I mean, just seems ludicrous to me, but you know, everyone has their own experiences. The 2-pot calipers on the front are very, very, very good. The only thing I would consider changing for next season on the rear is potentially having slightly more squared setup. So I'll put 2-pot calipers on the rear, and I'd be looking to maybe just run a softer compound pad in the rear then. So there's still a little bit more braking efficiency at the front, but there's a little bit more at the rear as well. I think I'm lacking a bit on the rear. I definitely don't need 4 pots on the front, but I'm lacking a little bit on the rear. I think the bias, you know, the brake bias on this car would be perfect at around about 55% to the front and 45% to the rear. You want a really steady braking, and I think that would be perfect. So I'm not putting 4-pot calipers on the front, and I'm not moving the front to the rear, and I'm not changing master cylinders or anything like that. We're just going to consider changing the rear calipers. But let me just dive in and tell you what we've got currently on the car and what we ran with this year. So we've washed the car, so they look a little bit rusty, but this is just superficial. We ran these front discs for 6 of the 7 rounds we entered. These are Elise Parts 304mm front discs, and with their alley floating bells, and these are floating basically because of the hardware setup. So these are like floating hardware setup, and that's helped with a bit of cooling on the car, cooling on the brakes, should I say. The front brakes were getting really hot, so these floating bells have just sort of helped with that cooling a little bit there. And the rear, again, very similar on the rear. We're running Elise Parts 288mm discs on the rear with their standard alley bells, so they're not floating on the rear, they're just standard. Obviously there you can see the handbrake caliper and the standard AP 2-pot calipers on the front. And the brake pads we run were the Performance Friction brake pads, which are really, really good. We were changing a bit more often than we'd have liked, because we had some problems with them breaking up. But they're really, really good brakes. They're really good pads, give you a really good feel, and they can withstand a 2-3 hour endurance race, no problem at all. So that's the pretty much, I think, for the braking system. And the only other modification really we did on the car, which you can't see here, was the suspension. So at the start of the season we ran with our Öhlins one-way suspension, 46mm shock bodies, and halfway through, well, not halfway through, about third, fourth round into the championship, just before Spa, we had a problem on that suspension, but at the same time we decided to switch to Nitron dampers, and we switched almost like for like. We went for a one-way damper system, but just completely on Nitron's products and their, you know, their spec guidance, and they were awesome. They were awesome. They helped us out all season. They were really friendly to deal with. We dealt directly with the factory, with Michael and Adam, and yeah, I think as soon as we switched to them and we went out to Spa and we got 2 podiums. So I had no issues on the suspension whatsoever. We fine-tuned them throughout the season until the last round of the season. We tuned them a little bit more. We played with setup and balance on the car, and I've uploaded a video lap time at Silverstone GP which was 2:21 dead, and for a little Lotus Elise that was pretty phenomenal. It's faster than I'd gone on that circuit all year, and yeah, I mean, that video's up. There's an onboard video, and you can see the car is so planted, even into the high-speed corners. We were getting to speeds, you know, we were getting entry cornering speeds far higher than we ever thought we would. So I'm just going to quickly show you the suspension here. So here it is. We've got a front shock and a rear shock damper here, and then we've got the springs. We've got the helper springs as well. Essentially, these are Club Sport one-way dampers. They are 40mm shock body. They are spec'd for track, so they're valved for the track. I think they account for a natural 10mm drop on the car, so you can drop the ride heights by 10mm just by putting this suspension on, and it's definitely needed. If you can drop the ride height on your car a little bit, it's very, very good for the track. And I've got nothing but good things to say about Nitrons, to be honest. And we actually have a exciting announcement coming up with Nitrons in the very near future, so check out that very soon. But other than that, I think that pretty much covers most of the modifications any of you will be interested in. It covers everything. We've covered power, cooling, weight loss, braking, suspension, and as the car sits now, that's what it's running on. What we're doing now is we're going to strip the car, end of season, strip the car, sort of everyone calls it a winter rebuild or winter refresh or whatever, which essentially means we're going to strip everything off the car, get all of the bodywork off, we're going to check everything, we're going to replace items that we would consider as consumable for the season, i.e. we're just going to replace them fresh for next season, and we're going to go again racing next season. I haven't fully announced what championship we're racing in, what we're doing. There's options on the table, but announcements going to come very soon for that as well. And yeah, that's it. So if you got any questions or anything on the modifications, drop a comment below. I'll point you into the direction of who sells that part or who made that part. And if you want anything, just drop a comment below. Otherwise, thanks for watching, I suppose. Or yeah. So. There it is, there she is, and we're going to start stripping her right now. And if I've got any interesting topics or conversations, things to talk about, or video, I'll do that. Otherwise, please follow our page on Instagram, which is instagram.com/Joe Taylor Racing. Follow us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/Joe Taylor Racing, or go into YouTube and search Joe Taylor Racing and subscribe to our channel there. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.